truly honored to be here. Again, my name is Apoorva Mehta. I'm the founder and CEO of Instacart. For those of you who do not know, Instacart is a product where you can order your groceries and have them delivered to your door within 1 hour. What's interesting is how we actually make this happen. We don't have any warehouses, we don't have any trucks, and we don't hold any inventory. So when you order your groceries on Instacart, we connect you with one of the tens of thousands of personal shoppers in our network across the country who are trained by Instacart, who go to existing grocery stores such as Whole Foods Market, pick up your groceries and deliver them to your door. I started this company about 3 years ago, and today we have 330 people in our company. We do millions of dollars in sales every single day, and we're live in 18 markets in the United States. So far, quite honestly, the journey has not been easy. It's been very, very hard. So what I'd like to do today is take you through some of those failures that we've had and some of the lessons that we've learned. Hopefully those lessons are interesting to you. The first lesson that I learned was, in fact, 2 years before I even started Instacart. Like Walter mentioned, I used to be a supply chain engineer at Amazon.com, and I'd always wanted to start a company. But it wasn't until January of 2010 when this entrepreneurial itch began to be something I just could not ignore. So I realized that my personal development at Amazon was plateauing, and I wasn't going to be able to do anything substantial at a big and bureaucratic company like Amazon. So I decided that I was going to quit and start my own company, and that's what I did. But at the time, I had no idea what I was going to do. So in the search of an idea, I spent the next 2 years building about 20 or so products, hoping that one would eventually take off. Some examples of products were things like analytics platforms for online advertisers, flash sales for restaurants, or social networks for social gamers. And for each one of these products, I'd try to get traction with the customers. I'd try to see if there was a market out there for the product that I was building. But unanimously, the results were failure after failure after failure. With each one of these products, I would just see that the customers were just not interested. And while this may have been a great learning experience for the 2-year time span that I was working on, but it took a toll on my self-confidence and drive. I began to question if entrepreneurship is something even for me, if I should just go back to doing my job at Amazon, and what was I even doing with my life? And then after a few weeks of more brainstorming, I started to think about this idea that I started to build conviction on. At the time, I distinctly remember thinking that this idea was brilliant, that this idea was going to be the one that changes the world. The idea itself was a social network for lawyers. And the product will allow lawyers to create profiles online. They'd be able to connect with each other. They'd be able to share interesting articles and court opinions with each other. They should be able to share referrals with each other. But the fact was that I didn't know anything about lawyers. And so I decided to learn as much as I could about lawyers. I met as many as I could find. I found everything they did in their day-to-day lives. And with that knowledge, I built the product and built a team and raised about $1 million to finance this idea. And it took me about a year of working on this idea, iterating on it, pivoting in many different directions, to finally realize how terrible of an idea this was. We realized that the lawyers don't like technology. They don't like sharing. And most of all, I realized something so basic, which was I don't give a shit about connecting lawyers. And herein lied my first lesson, which was don't search for an idea, search for a purpose. And in all the 20 ideas or so that I was working on, none of them had a purpose that I could really get behind. All of them were just business ideas. And as all of you know very well, there are lots of failures in business. And you cannot persist through them unless you truly believe in the underlying purpose. And my purpose in life was certainly not to connect lawyers. And a problem that has been with me for as long as I can remember has been how much I dislike going to the grocery store. As a kid, my mom used to force me to go to the grocery store, and I hated it. And as a grown-up, I had to do it myself and did not enjoy it. This was 2012 when I realized that the internet had added tremendous amount of efficiency throughout the world. We heard about Kickstarter adding financing a brilliant idea. We've seen how booking travel, dating, or buying big screen TVs is all just more efficient online. And this was 2012, and the activity that hundreds of millions of households had to do on a weekly basis was done still in the most inefficient way possible. Because this was a problem that was so close to my heart, and because this is something that I could solve myself, I realized that this was a purpose that was for me. The second lesson I learned at Instacart was a lot later in my journey. In the spring of 2012, I started working on the first version of Instacart, and I promised myself that I would not go to the grocery store until Instacart was ready. And so on June 2nd, 2012, I had the first version of Instacart, which was ready. And then I placed an order on Instacart. And at this time, of course, there was only me in the company. And so I then went to the grocery store, picked up the groceries, and delivered them to myself. I tipped myself quite well, too. So after sort of building the first version of Instacart, I shared it with my friends. And this was something interesting that I realized at that time, which was that as I shared Instacart with my friends, they started using it more and more. And this had never been the case with all the products that I built before. I didn't have to force them to use it. They were using it on their own. And they weren't just using it, they were using it again and again and again. And soon I found that people that I had not shared Instacart with were also downloading Instacart and using it, which was fascinating to me. And at the time, I truly cared about every single part of the customer experience. And what I would do was I would email the customers right after their order to see if their experience was great. This allowed me to iterate on the product really, really fast and continuously improve the product. One customer named Dan ordered his groceries on Instacart, and then my shopper delivered them to the customer. And then right after delivering the groceries, the shopper calls me and says, hey, this customer was very odd because he had ordered all these bananas and he would not accept the bananas. So I thought that was very odd as well. And so I emailed Dan and I said, hey, was everything okay with your order? And especially with your bananas, were they okay? He emailed me back 30 seconds later, and he sounded very agitated. He said, I ordered 10 bananas from you guys, and you brought me 10 bushels of bananas. What do you think this is, a zoo? What ended up happening was that the picture of the bananas on Instacart was a bushel of bananas. So there was confusion between what the customer thought that they had ordered and what the shopper thought that the customer had ordered. So we emailed Dan a banana bread recipe, and he was fine after. So as we were sort of keeping a very close eye on the customer service and the quality of service that we were providing, we were just growing tremendously fast. We found that we were growing so fast in the Bay Area that we had to question whether it only worked in the Bay Area or whether it would work anywhere else. And so then we launched Chicago very cautiously. And what we found was that in 3 weeks there, we were doing more deliveries than in 33 weeks in the Bay Area. So the growth there was tremendously fast. And then we launched Boston, which was growing even faster than Chicago or Bay Area ever did. Then we launched DC. That was growing even faster than the markets before that. And with all the expansion that we did and with all the growth that we were seeing, we were able to raise another round of financing. And everyone was just high on growth. Everyone wanted more growth. The investors wanted more growth. I wanted more growth. The employees wanted more growth. Everyone wanted growth. And so we went from, within months, we went from 50 employees to 200 employees. We went from 500 or so personal shoppers to tens of thousands of personal shoppers. We went from 3 markets to 15 markets. And we were growing so fast until we weren't growing, until the growth stopped. And this was a very, very difficult time at Instacart. When we peeled the layers of the onion here, we found that when the whole team was focused on growth, what we had stopped looking at was why we were growing. And the reason why we were growing was because people loved our product. People loved their product, and they would share with their friends. They would order again and again. And with all the focus on the growth, that's what had suffered. After we paused all expansion, we looked at the data, we ran a few experiments, and what we found was that grocery shopping is just hard. There are 8 million SKUs on our catalog at this point, and picking avocados is very different than picking shrimp. It's very different than handling eggs. And when you have tens of thousands of personal shoppers all across the country doing this, how do you maintain a consistently high standard? That becomes a very challenging problem. And as we have focused on growth, we have done a tremendous job at maintaining the culture and the purpose at the headquarters level, but we had not maintained that in the tens of thousands of people across the country who were actually picking and delivering the groceries. That's what our company does. And so we looked at that, and we found that the people who were picking and delivering the groceries were not culturally aligned with the company. They did not share the same purpose as I did, or as others in our headquarters did. And so that's where we learned our second lesson. And now it's very obvious, but it wasn't at the time, which was that it's not only important for you to believe in a purpose, but it needs to be shared with every single level of the organization. And that was not the case with the tens of thousands of personal shoppers that we had. So over the course of the next few months, we converted thousands of them into employees of Instacart. We made sure that they went through the same cultural interviews as all the executives and all the other people in Instacart did. We also made sure that every single person in the company went shopping for groceries every single quarter. In many cases, the first day that they would join. And this has ensured that we are focusing on what truly matters. What is the true driver of growth, which is the fact that we are very close to the customer experience. And that comes with a shared purpose. The third lesson has been something that we've learned over the course of Instacart's journey. In the early days of Instacart, it was very difficult to raise capital for a company like this. And it's not very surprising. I mean, there have been some spectacular failures in this industry. Webvan and Cosmo were billion-dollar failures. One time, I remember I was pitching a venture capitalist when suddenly he got up and he left the room. And I was surprised. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Then he came back and he had a floppy disk in his hand. He said, "You should study this. This has a Webvan business plan." I didn't have a floppy drive, so I never really opened it. But and we were able to raise capital. But it brought up an interesting point. What kind of partners do we want to work with? All of us at Instacart, of course, believe and understand that this is the first time in history where a company like Instacart is actually possible. This is the first time in history where the smartphone penetration is so high that now everyone has a GPS-enabled, internet-enabled supercomputer in their pockets, which means that they can use that to provide a service and earn a wage instantaneously. And that's why companies like Uber exist today, which did not exist 10 years ago. But it wasn't just the technological catalyst that we needed as a company. We needed a cultural catalyst. We needed to partner with companies that were thinking about the future, were willing to innovate. We wanted to have partners and investors who were willing to believe in the future that we believed. And And that's where we realize that today, while we work with hundreds of grocery stores across the country and we have lots of investors, we're saying more no's than we're saying yeses. We choose to work only with partners who are going to innovate with us and are going to move the industry forward. And we say no to others who will not. So to sum it up, 3 lessons, 3 very obvious lessons. Have a purpose that you believe in. Number 2, make sure that is shared across the organization at every single level. Number 3, make sure that all your stakeholders also believe in the same purpose. Thank you so much.